Hey friends, I'm Otis Gibbs, and this is my buddy Warner Hodges. He's going to share some stories about hanging out with Billy Gibbons.
Billy Gibbons is everything cartoon caricature that you think he is that guy. He literally is the have mercy guy. I mean, it's fantastic, you know. It's Dan Baird. I always tell this stuff when I recorded with Dan. It was like a 15-year-old kid enthusiasm with 65, 70-year-old knowledge. Billy Gibbons is that guy. First time I sat down with him at his house, we talked guitars for 3.5 hours. Him showing me, what about this one? What about this? You know, it was just the coolest thing in the world. It's like, wow, I am sitting on the sofa. His business card says, Billy Gibbons, friend of Eric Clapton, and his phone number. You know, how cool is that? He told me this story, 17 years old. He's opening up for, in the Moving Sidewalks, right? They open up for this band called Cream. Had this fellow named Eric Clapton in it. You ever heard of him? Yeah, I have, you know. He said, and then a couple weeks later, we open up for this band. It's got this singer in it named Rod Stewart. A guy named Jeff Beck playing guitar. A guy named Ron Wood playing bass. You ever hear of any of those guys? He says, and then like a month later, we open up for this left-handed fella playing guitar, you know. Hendrix, right? He's like, I'm 17 years old. In 6 weeks, I've got Hendrix's phone number, Rod Stewart, Jeff Beck, Ronnie Wood, and Eric Clapton's phone number. I'm 17. I've got their home phone numbers, you know. Hendrix is on record. Billy was his favorite guitar player. Touchdown, done. You know, as far as I'm concerned, done. I was actually talking to his wife, Gilly, about it. We were talking Jimmy Page, right? Jimmy Page and his guitar, Billy and Pearly Gates. I said, there's probably no two more famous Les Pauls. I mean, name me one, you know. Greenies, maybe, but Pearly Gates and Page's number one are probably the two most famous Les Pauls out there, I guess, besides the first one, Les Paul's one, you know. He's as famous a blues guitar player as there is. If you do a list, he's got to be on it, and he's going to be real close to the top, you know. It's always the perfect tone, the perfect note selection. The cool factor's completely off the chains, you know, and he loves to go to Walmart shopping. I mean, I can't imagine walking around Walmart and Billy Gibbons is walking through there with a cart full of crap, you know. It's fantastic. His choices that Dan Baird talks about are always 100% right. There's never why did he play that? It's always like, whoa. And we haven't even mentioned LaGrange. And to me, I mean, you Hall of Fame right there, done. You ain't even got to do nothing else, you know. It's just always perfect, always. You know, I listened to the Book video. You know, I guess Book's played with him a bunch. You know, can't imagine. You know, because Book's a monster too. But Billy Gibbons. You know, I told him the other day it's really cool as a fan. During ZZ, when they were, you know, when their manager was Bill Ham I mean, they did ZZ Top and that was it. You didn't see them anywhere else. Now, ZZ Top big, you know. But it's cool to see him showing up all over the place, playing with everybody. Because he's Billy Gibbons, man. It's great. He's going to bring something to every situation. But, I mean, you know, Mexican Blackbird, man, good Lord. Man, you could not sit any farther back in the pocket and still be in time, you know. My God, all of Eliminator, you know, wish I'd have wrote any of those, you know, good Lord. And the guitar tones on that record, my God, you know. And that bought them a whole second career. You know, they were kind of done and over, that little old band from Texas. Nope, they weren't, you know. Tones always, as a guitar player, all of it's going to be great. I've noodled around on some of his guitars, but he don't know about it. Stuff sitting around the house. Yeah, for me, I can't keep anything in tune. I squeeze too hard. You know, What's his story of B.B. King telling me he's working too hard, you know? He told me a great story when he did recently he played the Tonight Show or whatever. He played Hendrix's Flying V, right? They brought it out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and he played Hendrix's Flying V. He had not thought about it. Nobody said anything to it. When they handed him the guitar 15 minutes before downbeat, it had tens on it. And he said, I wasn't going to drive the, because Billy's a cool guy. He said, I just wasn't going to drive the techs crazy. I thought, I'll do it. He said, man, it was hard because I haven't played those strings in a long time, you know. But he just went for it and played what was on the guitar, you know. Yeah, I mean, you think about it, his technique's got to be off the chain great, you know. His right hand. Dan always said they gave the pick to the smart hand, Dan Baird. His right hand. Of course, his left, too. My problem is squeezing everything too hard. You know, it's just melted butter up there, you know. Yeah, you're an acoustic guy. You're going to have a hard time anyway, you know.
Do a lot of things wrong.
In 1989, we were on a European tour with the 5-piece version of the Scorchers. We had done Thunder and Fire, had Andy York, who's been with Mellencamp since we broke that up that time, and Ken Fox from the Fleshtones was playing bass with us. Ken later went on to be in the Fleshtones and has been for 30 years. We're in Europe playing, and we get told by our record company they're going to cancel the rest of the tour. We're going to America to play 22 shows opening for Bob Dylan. All right, cool. You know, that's big doings. We're playing with Bob. It's wonderful, but we're not playing Sweet Marie. Fourth show, Mr. Dylan, why aren't you boys playing Sweet Marie? Well, sir, it's your song. We didn't think we should. Oh, your version's better than mine. You should be playing it. It's like, whoa. Oh, okay, we will. I spent the entire tour him wanting to buy my Jazzmaster from me. I got an old Jazzmaster that I jokingly refer to it as the Scorcher Show. It was most of Fervor and Lost and Found is that guitar. Didn't have a lot of guitars at the time. I've got a 71 Firebird pickup in it and a telly set up as a telly setup. But Mr. Dylan, I'm not selling that. My parents, this is my first guitar. My parents bought me this guitar. I think he was just messing. Oh, you need to sell me that guitar. I think he's just messing with me the whole time. It's like, Mr. Dylan, I'm not going to sell you the guitar. Yeah. But my sweatshirt story, I'll go on and tell it. The guys in the band, the guys in the crew, they had to load a Baby Grand on stage and tune it every day. 22 shows. He played it twice at soundcheck. Never played it during a show. So that was kind of a bone of contention. Jason sat down at the piano bench one night during one of my guitar solos, and we almost got thrown off the tour. He sat down with his back to the piano, but sat down on the bench. One day, we had been told if the hood's up, you're not allowed to speak to Bob. If the hood's down and he speaks to you, you can speak to Bob. Like, oh, okay, I probably won't be speaking to Bob. I don't really need to, Wait, he don't need to talk to me anyway. He's Bob Dylan. I'm not, But we come in one day and all the roadies have hoodies on. They got their hoods up. It was just wonderful, and everybody in the hall that has a hoodie on with their hood up. It's like, okay, we can't talk to anybody, And Bob walks up to the mic and sound check and goes, oh, you motherfuckers wearing hoodies owe me $50 for the hoodies. It's like, touchdown! They're all wearing hoodies, man. You went out to the merch table, so you can't return them. You're going to have to buy them. I love that. The Dylan thing was cool. My memories of it, my problem with the Dylan thing, that's where we found out how sick Perry Baggs was. We didn't know what was going on. Perry was struggling. He was having a hard time. We were playing 40-minute opening sets, and Perry was always like, yeah, And he was struggling to do 40-minute sets, having a lot of energy down, and it was literally like, man, and he lost a bunch of weight all at once, all kinds of weight. And it was literally like, wow, man, what's wrong? Have you got into something you shouldn't be into? What's going on here? And he came to us. We had 4 more Dylan shows to do. We were like in Tampa, Florida or something. He had a hernia I mean, his groin looked like he had half a grapefruit under his skin. Took him to the hospital. They did blood work and immediately come back. Mr. Baggs, you're not taking your insulin. What's the deal? Didn't even know he was diabetic. Barry didn't know. It wasn't like he went to the doctor very often. But he was right on the verge of a diabetic coma. And they kept him. We had to play that night. We played, me, Andy, and Jason did an acoustic thing. We're on benches, playing acoustically at the Dillon thing. And we ended up finishing the tour that way. We sent all the roadies home except for the tour manager. Got most of the gear gone, so we weren't paying for days of stuff we didn't need. Finished the tour that way and started talking. It started being bantered around, maybe we should do an acoustic record. And I was like, time for me to go, I didn't sign up to play acoustic on a bar stool. That is not what I signed up for. I would rather be at work hammering nails than doing that. So that was when I finally left the band the first time, before Jeff Johnson put the band back together. And that was where we found out how ill Perry was at the time. And he had that really bad diabetes. It was rough. He ended up passing away from it 10, 20 years later. I don't know. Perry's been gone now probably 13 years, 14 years, something like that. He died right before my little brother. My little brother died in 2004. Oh, no, Perry's been gone like 20 years. Yeah, long time. My younger brother died in 2004, and Perry passed away right before that. So, not a good year. We did 5-6 months with Stevie. We did almost a year off and on with the T-Birds when they had Tough Enough and all that. And the Stevie dates were just magnificent. Stevie was bumming cigarettes from me all the damn time. It's like, wow, Stevie, seems like you could buy a pack of cigarettes, I have to be honest. Stevie was drinking a lot then, and I got to admit, so was I. We just had a great time. I do remember Stevie was really big on, he made sure his sound check would be cut short to make sure we got an hour to sound check and an hour to go get ready before the show. And he took it upon himself to make sure that happened. Every blue moon he'd come to you guys got everything you want? Come to the dressing room. You missing something? I'll go bitch. You missing something? Which was cool. I mean, Stevie had been on the other end of that coin, We were pretty fortunate with the bands we opened up for early on. We probably did 100 shows with REM back in the old days. I'm talking 81, 82, 83. We were fortunate. Stevie was great. He was really good to us. It was one of the first tours we did where our fans dug him. His fans would at least tolerate us if they didn't dig. If we were a little too punk rock for them or whatever, they tolerated us. They didn't hate us. There were a lot of places Jason and the Scorchers played where people just didn't know what to do with it, It's like, what are they, a country band, a rock band? 40 years later, dude, I don't know. I still don't know the answer to that question, We were both of them. But Stevie's fans put up with us. The T-Bird thing, that worked too. We weren't a blues band by any means. Those guys were a lot more, blues oriented and had a lot of hardcore blues people coming to see them. But those people at least would tolerate Jason and the Scorchers, let us do our show. Some of them become fans, and there were usually a good amount of Jason and the Scorchers fans at those shows too. So. And he had like one of the first Dumbles, right? And it was great. It didn't have the strain reliefs that hold the power tubes, the heads mounted power tubes, the hanging. He played so loud the power tubes would vibrate out of the amp, The damn power tubes would just fall out of the amp. I mean, he was an amazing player, but good God, it was loud, clean loud, and it had the plexiglass shields up and all that stuff. Like, yeah, right. Like that was going to do anything to stop anything, The thing that was also cool about his rig, Stevie was the first guy I've ever seen. He had an amp tech and a guitar tech. Because same thing kind of with the AC/DC thing. His amp rig was basically a pawn shop of Fender stuff. He had the Fender Leslie, he had the Fender Vibroverbs, and there would be 3 or 4 things lined up. And if something broke down, they just pulled it out of the way and slid everything forward They knew stuff was going to break down. You know, he was running the hell out of it. It's going to happen. You drive a car at 100 miles an hour, guess what's going to happen? It's going to break down, you know? And it was just kind of planned on. He had a guitar tech that did nothing but dealt with, an amp tech that did nothing but dealt with amps, and a guy that dealt with guitars. Caesar, I think, dealt with guitars, you know? It was cool. They were Strats. Yeah, they were Stevie Strats, but it's weird. I don't look at guitars the way a lot of people look at guitars. You know, I mean, like Dan Baird names guitars. It's a guitar. I'm not going to name the damn guitar. It's a tool to do the next job, you know. I do know the old Strat, the Strat. I mean, I've never seen anybody do to a guitar what he did to that guitar, and it went and went and went. He was a walking Stratocaster endorsement feed. You know, the only one I've ever seen better is the Keith Richards pulling the telly off, hitting the guy, putting it right back on, and going back to it. You know, there's your Fender telly ad in a nutshell. But Stevie, he was an amazing player. I mean, there's no way around it. I don't think he meant to do what he did. Bunch of dudes running around with a bad hat and a blanket around them now. You know, it's like so much. But at least we don't live in Austin. We don't have to see that every day. You know. You know, but he ran the tube screamer kind of weird too, because it was like volume all the way up, distortion all the way off. You know, it was just a little bit more. I actually run one of my boost pedals that way purposely because of the way he did it. I'm sure it's nowhere near what he was doing, but in my head, I'm getting there, you know. Those are mostly 4,000 or 5,000 seaters, you know, big theaters. It was cool. The Scorchers were able to do 1,000, 1,200 people. He was able to do 2 or 3. It worked, putting the two bands together. We were able to move into a little bit larger venue. It was also, once again, back when MTV still played videos, that really helped, you know. People that didn't know about you found out about you. So Scorchers were still hitting on both barrels at that point. Yeah, but it was usually like, oh my God, you know, drink fiascos, you know, especially with the T-Birds, more with the T-Birds than Stevie. Stevie, you know, by the end of the night, it would be over. At that point, I did, however, I got to see 2 of the Stevie shows after he'd sobered up when he was flip-flopping with Jeff Beck. Ungodly. And it was great because he's playing with Jeff Beck. He had to be ungodly because Jeff Beck was going to be ungodly, you know. He's Jeff Beck. But they were magnificent shows. And it was great. Those guys at that point, they had quit drinking and doing drugs. They were trying to quit smoking. And they're literally, you know, one of the band guys asked Stevie if he had any of the Nicorette gum, and Stevie's like, oh, I only got 2 pieces, man. I only got 2 pieces. I'm like, you guys are Bogart and Nicorette gum, man. I got a car. I'll go to the store for you, you know. Oh, man, he was a monster. But he was a really good dude, too, you know. And every day he'd come in, it was when he'd done Scuttlebutton. I don't know if you've seen the video where he comes in the leopard print coat. You can tell he's just been woke up out of a tour bus bump, like 4 in the afternoon. He's still wiping his face and all that. He hits a couple of licks, and then they break into Scuttlebutton, and it's like, my God, you know. It's the record plus. And the dude has just woke up from probably being pretty hungover, you know. Astounding. But he'd walk in every day, hey, want to give me a Cruel Cigarette? What song you want to hear? It's like, oh, I'd love to hear Scuttlebutton, Steve. You know, yeah. Unbelievable. You know, it was just there in spades, man. He's, you know, I think about it, he's kind of, I've heard Clapton talk about this, and the blues guys, he's one of the only guys I've ever seen, you know, back, especially at that point when he's drinking. I mean, the solos could get just like, oh my God, you know, ridiculously long. But it just kept coming, man. It was like he had this connection to the stars, and it wasn't regurgitation of the last lick over and over. It just kept coming, you know. And he never run out of anything to say, which in a blues gig happens quite a bit, you know. The only other guy, I mean, Danny Gatton, probably deepest pockets I ever saw, but Stevie had some pretty deep damn pockets, you know, lick-wise. The Scorchers went to Australia, 85, 86. Jason and I were allowed to host. It was back in the days when MTV actually played music videos. We both got to host an hour on Australian MTV. And they got upset with me because I played an hour of AC/DC videos. I didn't play anything else. It was I play guitar because of those guys. I kept saying every commercial break, the only reason I'm in Australia is I want to meet the AC/DC guys. And the tour manager that the record company had hired for us was, I guess, a pretty big-time guy. And he somehow had found out through the network, supposedly AC/DC wasn't even in the country. Cut to my birthday, I guess it was 87. I walk in a dressing room, and I look over, and I literally do the double take, and I look over again, it's like, damn, that's Angus Young sitting there, you know. Angus is sitting in our dressing room with his wife, you know. And I hear you want to meet me, mate, you know. So he actually hung out all through sound check, stayed for the show. We asked him to play with us. He politely refused. Don't know that he knew any of the tunes anyway, but we'd have come up with something. But he stayed for the whole show. You know, everybody had said, he had told me, we'll probably leave early. We have to rehearse tomorrow at 7 a.m. Those guys would get their kids off to school and rehearse at 7 a.m. You know, can't imagine that volume at 7 a.m. But he stayed for the whole show. It was wonderful, you know. So that was the beginning of meeting them. I'd seen them probably at that point 40, 50 times. I mean, they're my favorite band, you know. That was in Sydney, I think. I'm not sure. It might have been Melbourne. I'm not sure. That night became a big blur. You know, I've got a picture somewhere, a Polaroid of Angus and I. I'm sitting on a stool. He's standing beside me, and I'm still 4 or 5 inches taller. Gotta love that stuff, man. But the guy is, you know, Angus and Mal, to me, that's rock and roll guitar 101 and 102. You know, those two sounds, Mal and Angus together, the only two things I've ever seen come close to that was Rick Richards and Dan Baird in the early Satellites days. That was just two guitars doing two different things that would tear your head off, you know. And it was like, sign me up. I'm in. You know, I also walked in. It was back when I still drank. Classic Australian story. I walk in a bar, order a beer. Guy walks up to me and takes a swing at me. Not hi, how you doing, nothing. Takes a swing at me. As soon as I opened his mouth, he was like, "Oh, mate, sorry, thought you were someone else." You know, just like, "Wow, dude, nice to meet you too." You know. Jeff Owsley, tech that used to work for the Scorchers, started out working for the Scorchers, but he's professional guitar tech. I mean, he's worked for Pearl Jam, he's worked for Neil Young, he's worked some with the Dead. Last real gig he had was working for the Heart Girls. I think Jeff's literally retired from the business now because he could. But Jeff and I are AC/DC fanatics, and Jeff knows every tech on the planet. And he just called me up. He got tickets and backstage passes and all that for the makeup show in Atlanta after Brian had to leave the band for the hearing problem. I'm like, cool, man, I'll meet you in Atlanta. Jeff flies up, I drive down. We go to the show, and Jeff knows both guitar techs. The guy that's teching for Mal, and I think his name's Trace, the guy that's teching for Angus. Hey, you want to go back and look at the gear? Hell yes, I want to go look at the gear, you know. So we get to go back and get the Reverb had just did the gear, you know, their video of all the gear, you know. And it's funny because Trace is talking about, this is the small indoor rig, 2,600 watt Marshall heads, every one of them on. The small indoor rig, you know. It's not the outdoor rig, this is the indoor rig. But we get to go through all the stuff. The guy's telling us all about it. I mean, it was fantastic. It was like our own personal Reverb guided tour by the tech. What I found funny was Angus had 3 guitars out. You know, he had the Back in Black SG, one other SG, and his signature model. They had, I've never seen this before, the guitar boat had a padlock thing on it. Trace was like, if I leave, people will play the guitars, so I have to lock them in the boat where people can't get them out, you know. But he only had 3 guitars. You see all these guys with 9 million guitars. Angus had 3 guitars, for a 2.5-hour show. And Trey said he'll play the Back in Black guitar the entire. I'll have to fight him to get it out of his hand one time to tune it. He'll want it back as quickly as he hands it to me, which is exactly what happened. Cliff, their bass player, had 2 basses. 2 basses. Cut to Stevie, their nephew, who's replaced Mal. Rest his soul. Mal's gone. Stevie has like 17 guitars over there. He's got a bunch of, he's like, Stevie's playing rock star, He's still only going to play 1 guitar most likely, but he had a lot of stuff. And what was really interesting about the rig, they cut to Mal's rig. Stevie actually has everything of Mal's out except the main guitar, the Beast. He plays Mal's backup, the number 2 guitar. But his amp rig is based on Mal's 100-watt super bass. It's like a 67 or something. Angus's stuff is all reissue stuff from 87. They had, I think Trey said, 72 Marshall heads out. They run them too hot. They had 2 guys that work for Marshall travel with them and just rebuild what they blew up last night every day. They just set up a shop. It's like, dude, where can I sign up for this gig, It's fantastic. They carried a washer and a dryer because they were tired of trying to find places for Angus to get the schoolboy uniform cleaned. So they just carry a washer and dryer with them and load it in and out every day. It's like, all right, I kind of get it, It was fantastic. It's just, once again, I'm a 15-year-old kid in a candy store on that kind of stuff. No. We had seats. It was actually great. We went out to our seats and I had to ask Steven Tyler to get out of my seat. It was great. We're going to sit down. That we had great seats. They were great seats, but it was like, wow, man, is Steven Tyler sitting in my seat? He was totally cool about it. He had no problem moving, but it was just like, yeah, okay. Steven Tyler's sitting in my seat. That's good. Yeah. Oh, it was fantastic. I wanted to be out front for the show. I didn't want to be on the side. Side of the stage is cool to watch, but man, out front's where it's at in an AC/DC show. I didn't know it. Trace was saying, there can't be any dead spots, and Angus will not wear in-ears. So, and there's like the ego ramp thing. There's monitors out there. There can't be any dead spots. He's got to be able to hear what he's doing. I get it. As a guitar player, I get it. But, I was like, well, how many of these cabinets are dummies? He said, none of them. Every one of them is on. It's like, wow. And the drummer, Chris Slade, which I'm sorry, I'm a Phil Rudd guy. I'm not a big Chris Slade guy. But Chris Slade had 2 he had a Malcolm and an Angus 4x12 as monitors. It's like, wow, dude, you need to hear it that bad too? It was pretty cool. And I have to say, not a big Axl fan, just not my cup of tea vocally. He did an ungodly job. I thought he was amazing. They were back in standard tuning. They weren't tuned down any, which they were having to do to try to help Brian out some. They played like 27, 28 songs, which they had got to where every 15 minutes there was another 5-minute jerk-off guitar solo because they had to. Angus did like one little solo. It was just song after song. It was wonderful. A lot of stuff I haven't heard in years, which was great. I personally thought it was not going to be a great show. I went in with bad expectations and left going, wow, fantastic. And it was also very apparent. Angus was also sick as a dog that night. You'd have never known it. Had the flu. You'd have never known he was sick. And I left that night going, you know what? He ain't done. He's still got some gas in the tank. The time before I'd seen him, it was like, wow, Angus is getting old, Nah. He ain't done. And I hope I hope he does some more. I love the Power Up record that they put out during COVID. I got it. It's a great record, And the fact that they just threw it out there was like, all right, here, in the middle of COVID, it was the only sunshine I got, I'm absolutely in. And if Angus was sitting here, his influences are Chuck Berry. There it is. And Mal. Chuck Berry and Mal, my brother. All right, next. It's like, all right, cool. His older brothers, George from the Easy Beats and Mal, obviously were feeding him the right records. Because you go back to the old AC/DC, the original stuff. And he, sonically, of course, it got better. They had more money, it got better. But note selection, he was on point at 15 years old. He was on point, It's kind of like the Skinnerd guys, Alan Collins and Freebird. He was on point at that point, whether you like him or not. Wish you'd have done that one, First time I saw him, my old guitar tech, Dave Sutherland, had raved about this guy, Danny Gatton, and he had introduced me to, he was the guy that kind of started introducing me to the country super pickers that I didn't know. I knew Albert Lee, I knew James Burton from my parents' stuff, loved that stuff. But Dave turned me on to Roy Buchanan and Danny Gatton and some folks I didn't know about. And Gatton, we played D.C. We were actually in D.C. We opened for Bob Dylan somewhere. And Gatton was playing the Grog and Tankard, Grog and Kettle, whatever. It was like a house gig he did every Monday and Tuesday. And Dave was like, man, we got to go. You got to see this guy. I was like, all right, let's go see him. 3 hours, never heard anything twice. Amp on stage, any guitar player that wants to get up, come on. Room was full of nothing but guitar players, but nobody come on. Yeah. He was absolutely the most astounding guitar player I've ever seen in a live situation with a chord, a couple of pedals, and a deluxe. No smoke, no mirrors, talent. Nothing but talent, I looked up a few years later. I get taken to see NRBQ by this guy, a buddy of mine named Jim DeBessman, who has passed away during COVID. But Jim takes me, I was living in New York at the time. He takes me to this NRBQ show. I'd never seen our NRBQ. I'd heard about him. Pete Bucket always raved about him being his favorite band. And they had this little guy named Danny Gatton opening for him, And I literally watched 45 minutes of Gatton and then Big Al Anderson and NRBQ, the real NRBQ. Not that the new one isn't great, but I got to see, the real got Terry and Joey and, Tommy and Big Al. They were astounding. And you literally left with your head down going, man, I got to get a job. if that's guitar playing, I'm out. I'm done. I don't have anything for this, And I got to see Gatton one other, at the Ace of Clubs here. I got a poster at home, something, hey, Warner, I hear you play guitar, man, good luck, Danny Gatton, Say, yeah, right, But he was astounding, and everybody in his band was too, everybody in his band was his level. The bass player, I don't know his name, oh my God, But they were all, everybody in the band was that magnitude of player, just off the charts, great players. Years ago, I went to see Jimmy Hall and the Prisoners of Love, Kenny Greenberg. They played a little place used to be out on Nolensville Road called Boardwalk Cafe. And it was rumored that Beck was going to sit in. Jimmy had sang on a bunch of Beck stuff. They were buddies. And so, of course, I went. Me and Dave Sutherland went. There's like 3 girls and 350 guitar players. Yeah. And a little club, And Jeff Beck does play with them. And I'm this close to Jeff Beck. We're front table as close as you can get. It was magnificent, seeing something like that. And it's Nashville, Tennessee, though, man. You lived here. It's unbelievable, the stuff you can see in this town on any night, The talent level here, off the charts. Dan Baird always joked about he's the 462nd best guitar player in town. And I would always laugh and go, wow, that makes me 463. And I'm sure there's no truth in that. I'm one of the guitar owners in town, There's some great players here. No, the problem with Danny, honestly, was he was known as the world's greatest unknown guitar player. And I don't know why. He was off the chain great at everything. When I saw his solo gigs, it would be everything from country to music to as far to the right as you could go. I never got to see his jazz thing. When it's 5 guys playing jazz where I can't find the one, I'm out. I don't mind jazz where it's like, okay, I can keep time with this stuff. But when it's like 5 dudes soloing and I just don't know where one is, I know they're incredible, but it's not my cup of tea. But Fun Band, whatever the hell they called it, Danny Gatton and Fun House or something. They were all monsters. And it's really a pity that it seems like the only people that knew about him was guitar players, you know. He was so great at what he did. You know, there's a really famous YouTube thing of him playing. He played with Roger Miller in Roger Miller's band for a while. But there's a YouTube thing of Vince Gill and Albert Lee where Danny's the rhythm guitar player in the band. And towards the end of the show, they let him have one. And he takes the roof off the joint, you know. And you can see Albert and Vince just kind of chuckle. It's like, yeah, you know, they knew, you know. But he just never seemed to get the credit he deserved, you know. And I don't know. And then, you know, he's passed away now. So he was the absolute deepest pockets guitarist I have ever seen, bar none. In any genre that I could listen to, he was the best at all of them, which is saying a lot. You know, I've seen some really great guitar players, and I love the country rock thing. You know, the Brad Paisley with a telly doing what he does is like, hell yeah, you know. Hell, Keith Urban. Keith's a monster guitar player, you know. I love Albert Lee, you know, love all that kind of stuff. Danny was, oh God, off the planet, you know. If those guys are, you know, the moon, Danny was the universe. You know, it was just like, whoa, you know, pretty incredible. I think any guitar player that you've interviewed on this would agree with that if they saw him. You know? And I saw him the first time in a shithole club. You know, it was just shithole, 150, 200 seat club. No smoke, no mirrors, just talent on loan. You know, just like, good Lord, how long did you woodshed to get that great, you know? And it was like falling off a log. Earlier in the year, in June, I played a club in Blackpool, England, the Waterloo, owned by Ian Fletcher. It's a great rock and roll club. We did a solo show, Warner solo show there, the Warner Hodges band. While I'm there through soundcheck and all, I hear they're doing this AC/DC Fest thing in November. And I get to talking to a few people, and it's mostly AC/DC tribute acts. And I told Ian, I said, dude, you know, why can't I play that, man? If you guys hire us, we'll show up, we'll do the whole Power Age record front to back. My favorite record, right? And Ian talked to the guy that was like the main, and the guy was like, oh God, yeah, we'd love it. So, you know, it sounded really good in June. You know, we signed up, we're going to do this, we're going to do the whole Power Age record front to back. In my band, we had like 4 of the songs already in our arsenal. I'll do some AC/DC. We try not to do it every day, but we do a song or two almost every show. But the whole idea is if we do a cover, we got to be able to play the hell out of the cover, or we ain't doing it. If Angus wouldn't see this and dig it, we can't do it. My guys get the point. They're in. Well, we're over. Cut to September, October. We're over touring with the Super Suckers, and every sound check's like, those other 5 songs, we're gonna learn this here, we're gonna learn that there. You know how sound check is. We never got to any of it. It just, hey man, we got to hurry up. You know, sound check, it just never worked out. So we're driving back to England from Germany. We got to go all the way up to Fofar, Scotland. It's actually weird. I haven't done one of these in years, but Ben, my guitar player, Ben Marston, and I, we do a duo gig, just me and Ben. We played it as if we had a drummer and a bass player, but it was just Ben and I. It was the 2 dichotomies of rock and roll. You know, we do that one night. The next night, we're at Waterloo to do the AC/DC Power Age record. Well, on the way to Fofar, I break the news to the guys that this is going to suck, but we've got to stop somewhere and rehearse. We got to learn those other 5 songs, you know. Well, I know we all have, but we haven't seen if the puzzle fits together, you know. You've practiced. We haven't rehearsed, you know. So in the middle of our travel, we stop and have a rehearsal, which everybody would rather have put needles in their eyes than done, you know. And the rehearsal is okay. It's like, all right, we got these under our belt. Power Age is a 40-minute record. We need a couple more songs. We had one other AC/DC song that's not on Power Age. Ben, my guitar player, says, I can sing a whole lot of Rosie. I went, boom, that gives us our set. and I don't have to learn the lyric. This is great, you know. We play faux far. We go play the AC/DC thing. AC/DC thing's great. We kick ass. It's wonderful. At 12:30 that night, we get in the van and we start driving for southern Germany, our next show the next day. We get to said show at 7:30 in the evening the next day. We've been traveling for like 19 hours. Downbeat's 8:30, right? So we literally get there at 7:30, set up, no sound check. We just set up, throw down a plate of food, go on at 8:35. We're 5 minutes late. Ended up having a really great show, but we were all, you know, running on fumes would be putting it lightly. You know, it was, there were a few songs where lines from different songs got sung and all kinds of fun stuff, you know. Rock and roll, man, that's what happens. It was a great idea in June when I agreed to it. When it actually came to having to do it, it was the stupidest thing we've ever done. And I know my band guys wanted to kill me. Why'd you agree to this, you know? Yeah, I do that every now and then. So you want to be in a rock and roll band, you know? And I'll give you, it's a step above, you know, Tommy Womack had the government cheese, but, you know, it was the book of riding around a band making $200 a night. My thing's a little bit bigger than that, but not much, you know? We actually had 2 of those. I haven't done it in years, but we had 2 of them. We did 13 shows in 14 days with the Super Suckers. I haven't worked like that in a long time. But twice we had, you're not going to see a bed for 48 hours, you know? That's hard on the singer. It's hard on everybody, I know, but the singer, the only thing that helps a voice is sleep, and I can't sleep in a band sitting up. And, you know, it's just, but those shows I did learn from the old days with the Scorchers, some of those shows sometimes become wonderful shows because you just hit the fuck it button. You're just like, dude, you know, let's just have fun. That's all we can do. Let's just have the most fun we can have with this. I'm tired, you're tired, we just want to go to bed. We have to play. Let's just have fun. And those actually, you shut your brain off and just have fun. You know, the crowd that we literally set up with a sold out audience staring at us, they were there ready, you know. We didn't get there till 7:30. They knew what had happened. They were cool with it, you know, and they I think they loved us more for the fact that when it come time, we all hit the gas pedal as hard as we could, and we had a great time, you know. But you want to be in a rock and roll band, that's, you know, you've lived it. You know the glamour, you know. I have buddies come out, they'll come out for a weekend and you send them home in a box. They just didn't realize you did all that other stuff too. Well, I mean, I always tell anybody if they come out for a visit for any amount of time, it's like any nap you can get, you know. Any tour like that. I mean, I just did 10 weeks. Longest tour I've done since the 80s, probably. First time I've ever done that as the singer. You know, the whole time you're worried, man, if I get sick, man, I messed the whole team up, you know. And we all got a cold, but via Dan Barrett and Joe Blanton, I knew some things to do. They had told me every trick they knew, and it did help having that knowledge, previous knowledge. But sleep is the only thing that helps a voice. You know, it's not a guitar. You can't put strings on it. It's not a drum head. You know, I'll just put a new head on it. You strip a voice, it's stripped. It ain't coming back, you know. You cannot simulate singing over a loud rock band, you know. You can practice all you want in your bedroom with an acoustic guitar. You're not fighting loud-ass amps, you know. There's it's Joe Blanton literally gets on his treadmill, puts his stereo on as loud as he can do it, runs and sings to try to simulate what it's going to be like, you know. It's like, wow, dude, that's serious. He's like, well, you can't practice for this. The only way to do it is to do it, you know. What we always did with Dan would always we'd go over, do 2 or 3 shows, have 2 days off, and then he'd be ready. But don't start out with 6, you know, because you're going to strip your voice. On the level we're doing it. Half the time the monitors suck. You know, I've never done any ears. I don't know that I could. I don't want to be on an island. I want the immersion of the whole thing. That's what we did on the Thunder and Fire album with the Scorchers. We could never seem to get Jason's live vocal. And we literally brought in a PA and let Jason sing live on that record. You know, he went at it as if he was on stage, you know. Like you say, Neil Young did it. It can't be wrong, you know. I want to be immersed in it. It's part of it. You know, I can do, as a background vocalist, God knows how many times I've done it without a monitor. You know, if the monitors weren't right, half the time I just reach down and unplug mine anyway. But I was singing backgrounds, not lead vocals, you know, a little bit different.